There is a universal, unspoken contract among civilized humans regarding the communal refrigerator. It is a sacred space, a sanctuary of sustenance where boundaries are demarcated by Sharpie on Tupperware and the honor system. When that contract is broken, it does not merely invoke annoyance, it breeds a very specific, quiet kind of madness. You begin to question your own memory. You start measuring the milk with a ruler. And eventually, if you possess the right resources and a touch of vindictive creativity, you stop playing the victim. You stop leaving polite notes. Instead, you turn your shelf into a minefield, waiting for the trespasser to take that fateful, agonizing bite. The air in Keokuk, Iowa did not just sit, it hung. It was a thick, industrial humidity that smelled faintly of wet corn and river mud pressing against the windows of my summer residence. I had relocated to this particular corner of the Midwest for a highly coveted research and development internship with a major food conglomerate. My job involved spending 8 hours a day in a sterile, stainless steel laboratory, tweaking the viscosity of commercial barbecue sauces and optimizing the shelf life of artificial cheese powders. Housing, generously provided by the company, was an exercise in surrealism. They had secured me a room in a local college dormitory that, until very recently, had functioned as an assisted living facility. The architecture still bore the grim, utilitarian hallmarks of its past life. Long, institutional corridors were lined with handrails. The floors were a scuffed, hospital-green linoleum that squeaked underfoot. Instead of a typical dorm kitchenette, the ground floor boasted a massive, commercial-grade culinary space left over from the cafeteria days. It featured a walk-in pantry, 6-burner gas ranges, and a hulking triple-wide refrigerator that hummed with a deep, vibrating baritone. Because it was the dead of summer, the college had no active academic programs. The sprawling Equi building was entirely empty, save for myself and 2 undergraduate students who had been permitted to move in early for the fall semester. One of these students was a ghost, a transient figure I saw perhaps twice in 3 months. The other was Bodhi. Bodhi was a fixture. He treated the abandoned retirement home as his personal, unsupervised kingdom. He had a rotating cast of friends who trailed mud through the lobby, monopolized the ancient television in the common area, and most crucially, viewed the commercial kitchen as an all-inclusive buffet. Given the sheer volume of space in the triple-wide refrigerator, partitioning our groceries should have been effortless. I claimed the top right shelf, Bodhi claimed the bottom left. For the first 2 weeks, I lived in blissful naivety. I would return from the R&D lab, exhausted and smelling of synthetic hickory smoke, looking forward to a cold ginger ale and a bowl of expensive, honey-roasted granola. The first violation was subtle. A bottle of premium ginger ale, imported and deliberately hidden behind a head of iceberg lettuce, simply vanished. I dismissed it. Perhaps I had consumed it and forgotten. But the thefts quickly escalated from the plausible to the brazen. I woke up one Saturday morning, craving a bowl of cereal, only to pull my box of granola from the pantry shelf and find it virtually weightless. Bodhi, or one of his many guests, had consumed the entire contents, meticulously folded the interior wax bag, closed the cardboard flaps, and placed the empty box back precisely where they had found it. It was an insult masquerading as an illusion. I drafted a note. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive diplomacy, penned in thick black marker on a sheet of loose-leaf paper and taped squarely at eye level on the refrigerator door. Please respect personal groceries. Do not consume food that does not belong to you. The following evening, I caught Bodhi lounging in the common area, surrounded by a faint cloud of cheap cologne and stale smoke. I approached him, keeping my tone casual but firm, and mentioned that several of my items had gone missing. Bodhi didn't even blink. He leaned back into the faded floral upholstery of the retirement home couch, offering a lazy, unconvincing shrug. He claimed ignorance, suggesting with a straight face that the building staff might be sneaking in to steal my snacks. It was a transparent lie, delivered with the smug invulnerability of someone who knew I had no proof. That weekend, I traveled back to my hometown to visit family. I returned late Sunday night, dragging my duffel bag down the squeaking linoleum hallway, already dreading the work week. When I opened the refrigerator to grab a bottle of water, my blood pressure spiked. Half a block of sharp cheddar was gone. A new carton of orange juice had been opened and drastically depleted. The diplomatic era had officially ended. The next morning in the R&D lab, I was standing over a stainless steel counter, aggressively titrating a sample of liquid smoke when my manager walked in. Tariq was a veteran food scientist with a sharp, analytical mind and a dry, ruthless sense of humor. He noticed my rigid posture and the dark circles under my eyes. He asked if the Iowa humidity was finally breaking my spirit. I set down my pipette and unleashed a tired, frustrated monologue about the retirement home, the empty cereal boxes, and Bodhi's shameless entitlement. I explained the logistical nightmare of having my carefully budgeted intern groceries pillaged by a college student who treated my pantry shelf like a convenience store. Tarek leaned against the edge of the counter, crossing his arms over his pristine white lab coat. A slow, highly deliberate smile spread across his face. He tapped his index finger against his chin, his eyes darting toward the massive binder of supplier catalogs sitting on his desk. He reminded me, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur, that as an R&D intern, I possessed a unique corporate purchasing power. My role involved sourcing new, innovative ingredients to test extreme flavor profiles. We were currently exploring a line of spicy barbecue marinades. It would be entirely justifiable, Tarek suggested, to order a few highly concentrated capsaicin extracts to evaluate their stability in lipid-based emulsions. For science, of course. Within an hour, I was on the phone with a specialty spice supplier based in New Mexico. I introduced myself as an R&D representative for the conglomerate and requested a variety of pure capsaicin extracts for a high-heat application study. The representative was eager to please. 3 days later, a small, heavily padded cardboard box arrived at the lab loading dock. Inside the box, nestled in foam cutouts, were 3 tiny 2-ounce glass dropper bottles. The labels were minimalist, featuring a simple numerical value and a warning symbol. They contained 50,000, 100,000, and 250,000 Scoville heat unit extracts. For context, a standard jalapeno peaks around 8,000 Scovilles. The 250,000 extract was not a condiment, it was a weaponized botanical defense mechanism. I waited until Friday evening, the night before I was scheduled to leave for another weekend trip. I packed a small canvas tote bag with my supplies, the 2-ounce bottle of 250,000 Scoville extract, a pair of thick blue nitrile gloves swiped from the lab, an N95 particulate mask, and a small, empty travel-size spray bottle I had purchased at a local pharmacy. I did not dare perform the procedure in the communal commercial kitchen. The ventilation was too poor, and the risk of cross-contamination was too high. Instead, I retreated to an empty, unused dorm room at the far end of my wing. The room was dark, smelling of dust and old carpet. I locked the door behind me, switched on the harsh overhead fluorescent light, and established my workspace on the bare laminate desk. I donned the N95 mask, adjusting the metal nose clip until it pinched tightly against my skin. I pulled the blue nitrile gloves over my hands, ensuring there was no exposed skin near my wrists. Carefully treating the vial like a volatile isotope, I unscrewed the dropper of the 250,000 Scoville extract. The liquid inside was a thick, viscous amber, resembling dark honey, but emanating a sharp chemical heat that I could feel radiating even through the mask. I transferred a generous portion of the extract into the travel spray bottle, diluting it slightly with distilled water to thin the viscosity and allow it to mist evenly. I shook the bottle gently, watching the amber oil suspend in the water. First on the operating table were the potato chips. Bodhi had a weakness for my kettle-cooked sea salt chips. I laid out a sheet of wax paper on the desk and poured out a massive handful of the chips. Holding the spray bottle a few inches away, I applied a liberal, even mist of the capsaicin solution over the corrugated surfaces of the potatoes. The liquid clung to the salt crystals, practically invisible. I left them spread out on the wax paper to dry completely, ensuring the moisture wouldn't give away the trap, before carefully funneling them back into the shiny foil bag. I folded the top exactly as I always did. Next was a fresh box of cinnamon square cereal. I opened the cardboard top, unsealed the wax paper, and gave the top layer of cereal several hearty pumps from the spray bottle. I shook the box vigorously, redistributing the lethal squares, and gave it another spray for good measure. The dairy required a different approach. I uncapped my half-gallon plastic jug of whole milk. I took the glass dropper directly from the extract vial and released 3 thick drops of pure, uncut amber liquid straight into the milk. I replaced the cap and inverted the jug slowly, watching the oil disperse and vanish into the opaque white liquid. Milk is supposed to be the cure for capsaicin burns. Drinking this would be akin to throwing gasoline on a grease fire. Finally, the beverages. I took 3 cans of my imported ginger ale. I squeezed a single drop of the extract onto a folded paper towel, and meticulously wiped it around the aluminum rim of each can, concentrating on the lip right above the tab. As the liquid dried, it left absolutely no visual residue. The metal looked pristine, cool, and inviting. I packed my doctored groceries back into my tote bag, stripped off the contaminated gloves, and disposed of them in a sealed plastic bag. I carried my payload down to the communal kitchen. The massive refrigerator hummed its steady baritone note as I placed the milk and the ginger ales on my designated top right shelf. I placed the chips and the cereal in the pantry, making sure they were easily accessible, practically begging to be taken. I locked my dorm room, got into my car, and drove out of Keokuk, leaving behind a silent, perfectly primed trap. The psychological weight of the weekend was immense. Every time I looked at the clock, I imagined the commercial kitchen in the abandoned retirement home. I envisioned Bodhi bringing a friend back from a late-night excursion, feeling the familiar rumble of the munchies. I pictured him reaching into the pantry, grabbing that foil bag of kettle chips, tossing a handful into his mouth, and chewing. I wondered how many seconds it would take for the delayed fuse of the 250,000 Scoville extract to ignite against the soft tissues of his palate. I wondered if he would scramble for the refrigerator, tearing open the cap of my milk, seeking salvation, only to swallow a mouthful of liquid fire. I returned to Keokuk late Sunday evening. The oppressive heat had finally broken, leaving the night air cool and still. The dormitory was dead silent as I walked through the heavy glass double doors. I dropped my bags in my room and walked straight to the communal kitchen. My heart beat in a slow, steady rhythm as I opened the heavy stainless steel door of the refrigerator. 2 of the 3 ginger ale cans were gone. The half-gallon of milk had been noticeably depleted, the level dropping by at least a quarter. I let the refrigerator door swing shut and walked over to the pantry. The box of cinnamon square cereal had been moved. The cardboard flaps were hastily tucked in, no longer matching my meticulous folding pattern. The bag of kettle chips was entirely missing. There were no bodies, there was no lingering smell of panic. The kitchen was exactly as I had left it, save for the missing bait. I never saw the immediate aftermath. I never witnessed the coughing fits, the frantic pacing, or the desperate splashing of tap water over burning lips. But the evidence of the massacre was undeniable. The trap had been sprung and the consequences had been consumed. For the remaining 4 weeks of my internship, I continued to stock my shelf with premium groceries. I bought imported chocolates, expensive cheeses, and delicate paper-thin prosciutto. I left boxes of cereal unsealed. I left beverages front and center. Not a single crumb ever went missing again. When I did happen to cross paths with Bodhi in the squeaking linoleum hallways, the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. He no longer projected that lazy, entitled arrogance. He would avert his eyes, clutching his own meager bags of fast food, offering a tight, silent nod before hurrying back to his room. He looked at me not as a roommate or a pushover, but as something entirely unpredictable, something slightly dangerous. It was a profound lesson in the architecture of boundaries. Sometimes diplomacy fails. Sometimes appeals to common decency fall on deaf ears. And in those moments, when your sanctuary is violated and your peace of mind is stolen, you must rely on the tools at your disposal. You must become a silent architect of consequence. I left Keokuk at the end of August, packing my car and driving away from the heavy humidity and the endless cornfields. I left the commercial kitchen behind, but I took the empty travel spray bottle with me. A quiet souvenir of the summer. I learned that respect is not always freely given. Sometimes it has to be extracted, one burning Scoville unit at a time. We all want to believe in the honor system, but the truth is, the world is full of people who will take a mile when you give them an inch. The line between being a pushover and being a villain is dangerously thin, but sometimes protecting your peace requires crossing that line just for a moment. If you've ever had to deal with a lunch thief, or if you've ever engineered your own brilliant retaliation, drop your story in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of spectacular revenge, and remember, always check the rim of your soda can. You never know who you've crossed.